The old elevator creaked and groaned, halting abruptly between two floors. Fluorescent bulbs flickered overhead, casting erratic shadows against the tarnished steel walls. Evan, a man in his mid-40s with weary eyes and a coat worn down to its threads, clutched a folder filled with rejection letters. The sudden sound of a choked sob pulled his attention. Huddled in the corner sat a woman, blindfolded, her face streaked with tears, clutching a scuffed violin case, like it was the last piece of herself. Evan stared, unsure whether to speak. The air was thick with something unspoken. "Are you all right?" he asked. Her head turned, slowly. "I played for the wrong man, and lost everything." Her voice was barely above a whisper. Evan didn't move. He couldn't. That moment, suspended in flickering light and silence, etched itself into time. Neither of them knew it was the start of something that would unravel secrets, pain, and an unexpected salvation. Evan swallowed, realizing how brittle his voice had sounded. "Name's Evan. Just a teacher, or was," he said, trying to smile but failing. The woman turned her face away. "Do you believe music can destroy lives?" she asked suddenly, voice sharp with old pain. Evan blinked. "Music saved mine once," he replied, soft and cautious. Her laugh was low, bitter. "Then you've never played it for the wrong soul." Her fingers absently ran over the clasps of her violin case. "I gave him everything, my compositions, my soul, even my sight. He sold them all, wrapped in his charm." Evan crouched down beside her, the floor groaning under his weight. "Who was he?" he asked gently. Her head turned toward him, expression unreadable. "A lie with a face," she said, her voice chilling in its certainty. The elevator moaned again, a mechanical sigh as though groaning under the weight of their silence. Evan held out his hand, palm up, waiting. The woman's fingers hovered uncertainly before brushing against his. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Clara," she whispered, voice soft as string vibrations. Evan glanced at the violin. "You still play?" She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "Not since the betrayal. I can't find the music anymore." Her words fell like final notes in a requiem. Evan said, "Maybe I can help you find it again." Her brow furrowed. "Why would you care?" Evan answered, "Because helping someone else is the only thing that still makes me feel like a teacher." Clara didn't smile, but something in her hand stopped trembling. Time became fluid. Evan spoke of classrooms once filled with life. Chalkboards covered in ideas, laughter echoing through hallways. "I miss them," he said. "The students, their questions, their energy." Clara listened quietly, her head leaning against the cold elevator wall. "I don't let people get close," she murmured. "I vanish before they can hurt me." Evan's voice softened. "Me too. Except I vanished even from myself." Their confessions, raw and fragile, floated in the air between them. "When the doors open," Clara whispered, "I won't know where to go." Evan stared at the closed doors. "Then let's figure that out together." Her head tilted slightly toward him. For the first time, the silence felt less lonely. The elevator jolted and rumbled to life. Both braced against the walls as it slowly descended. A soft ding echoed through the silence. The doors opened, revealing the lobby bathed in the pale blue hue of dawn. Clara stood shakily, violin in hand. Evan offered his arm. She hesitated, then gently took it. As they stepped into the lobby, whispers began. Hotel staff stared. A sharply dressed man approached, bowing. "Miss Clara, your car is ready." Evan froze. Clara didn't meet his eyes. "I didn't tell you everything," she said under her breath. Evan looked at the respectful faces around them, then back at her. "Clearly," he said, stunned. "Who are you?" But Clara only tightened her grip on his arm. Outside, the morning chill clung to the air like memory. Clara's black sedan sat idling, engine purring softly. The suited driver opened the door, nodding silently. Evan stood back, uncertain. Clara released his arm, turning toward him with an unreadable expression. "You should go," she said gently. "This isn't your world." Evan shook his head. "You think I care about limousines and bodyguards?" Clara's lips quirked, almost a smile. "You care about broken people. I saw it in the elevator." Evan replied. "Then let me walk beside one." Clara hesitated, then nodded. The driver raised an eyebrow. "Miss Clara?" She turned. "He's coming with me." The driver blinked but didn't protest. Evan followed, still trying to fit the image. The blind musician, now revealed to be something so much more than shattered notes. Inside the car, silence pressed around them. Evan glanced sideways at Clara. She sat tall, composed, fingers resting lightly on the violin case. "You were right," she said quietly. "I didn't tell you everything." Evan waited. "My name is Clara Duval." His eyes widened. The name echoed, composer, recluse, vanished heiress. "The Clara Duval?" he asked. She nodded. "I walked away from the spotlight when it stopped being about music. I thought I was free." Evan said. "And now?" She hesitated. "Now, I realize the past doesn't stay buried just because you stop playing." Evan turned to face her. "Whatever you're facing, you don't have to face it alone." Clara didn't answer, but her hand inched closer to his on the seat between them. The car pulled into a gated estate on the city's edge, the gates parting like theater, curtains revealing a world Evan had never imagined. Clara led him into a grand foyer, her steps confident despite the blindfold. "This place is beautiful," Evan murmured, overwhelmed by the marble floors and glass chandeliers. "It's a cage," Clara replied. "Elegant, but still a prison." She guided him through a music room filled with untouched instruments. "This was my sanctuary, until he came." Evan paused by the grand piano, fingers hovering over ivory keys. "He? The one who betrayed you?" Clara's lips tightened. "He didn't steal my music. He erased me from it." Evan stared at her. "Then let's make it yours again." Her head turned slightly, as if weighing the impossible. Later, Clara sat beside the piano, running her fingers across its surface like tracing a ghost. Evan stood nearby, watching. "He said I was nothing without him," Clara whispered. "He made me believe I could never create alone." Evan stepped closer. "That wasn't music. That was control." Clara laughed softly. "The worst part, I agreed with him, for a long time." Evan reached down, opening the piano lid. "Then let's play something, together. No judgment, just sound." Clara hesitated. "I haven't touched these keys in years." Evan sat beside her. "Then, let's press one." He played a single tentative note. Clara placed her fingers on the keys. Another note joined his. Then silence. But it was a new kind of silence, one filled with potential. Clara's hands lingered over the keys. One note at a time, she began to play. Evan watched in silence as melody slowly bloomed from her fingertips. It was raw, uneven, but unmistakably hers. "It's like waking up from a long sleep," she said. Evan nodded. "And realizing the nightmare's over." Clara stopped. "Not over. But maybe I'm strong enough to play through it." She turned toward him. "Stay. I mean, don't vanish, not yet." Evan's reply was soft, but resolute. "I'm here, as long as you need." A warmth settled in the room, not from the sun, but from a fragile trust being rebuilt between two broken people who found music again, not in perfection, but in honesty. Over the following days, Evan and Clara fell into a rhythm. Morning melodies, afternoon reflections, evenings layered with shared silences. But shadows always lingered. Evan noticed it first, the way Clara's fingers would freeze at certain chords, as if haunted. "That one?" he asked gently. Clara nodded. "He used it, in everything. It became his signature, and my curse." Evan leaned forward. "Then let's change it, make it yours again." Clara hesitated. Reclaim it, she murmured. Rewrite the very thing that broke me. Evan said, with truth instead of fear. She looked toward the covered mirror across the room. Then I'll need to see again. Even if just a little. Her fingers tapped the keys with renewed force, uncertain, but rising. Clara stood before the mirror, her blindfold unraveling slowly in her hands. Evan stayed behind, silent, offering no pressure. The silk slipped to the floor. Clara blinked. The world was a smear of shadows and color, like music without melody. I thought I lost everything, she said quietly. But I still see enough. Evan replied, It's not what you lost, it's what you still hold. Clara turned to him, face lit by sunlight. Then let's begin, not again, but new. With trembling fingers, she uncovered old scores from a locked drawer. I wrote these before him, before the betrayal, before the silence. Evan stepped forward. Let's give them life. Clara placed the sheets on the stand. Let's give me life. As they played Clara's early compositions, the house began to shift. Staff paused in hallways, drawn by melodies never heard. The walls, once echoing silence, now vibrated with soul. Evan's touch complemented Clara's raw memory. He filled where she faltered, paused when she flew. One evening, she whispered, I remember who I was. Evan smiled. And who you still are. But darkness lingered outside. That same night, an envelope arrived. No return address, just Clara's name. Inside was a single sheet, musical notation. Clara paled. This was mine. He published it, under his name. Evan clenched his jaw. He's not done, is he? Clara whispered, he's coming back. And this time he won't steal notes, he'll steal silence itself. Evan sat in the study, flipping through old press articles Clara had kept hidden. Photos of her and a sharply dressed man, always smiling, always standing slightly ahead of her. That's him? Evan asked. Clara nodded. Victor Lang, producer, thief, charmer. Evan frowned. He's in the city, performing your music, still claiming it's his. Clara lowered her head. And they believe him because I disappeared. Evan placed the papers down. Then let's make your return louder than his theft. Clara exhaled. I'm scared. Evan took her hand. Good, that means it matters. The fire in the hearth flickered higher. Outside the night darkened. But inside, resolve took root. The next morning Clara stood in the music hall of her estate, facing a small audience. Staff, old friends, and Evan at her side. She rested her fingers on the keys. This piece was stolen, she said. But I'm taking it back. Her first note rang out with defiance. Each chord layered years of pain with new strength. Evan added harmony, standing in quiet support. As they played, tears welled in more than one listener's eyes. The performance didn't end in applause. It ended in silence. Not empty, but whole. Clara rose. That was mine. Always was. Evan stepped forward. Now the world will hear it. Clara's chin lifted. Let Victor try to silence me again. 2 days later, Clara and Evan arrived at the conservatory where Victor Lang was hosting a private gala. Cameras flashed, violins sang, and the air buzzed with curated charm. Clara wore no blindfold, only a midnight blue gown and quiet fire in her gaze. We shouldn't be here, Evan whispered. Clara's jaw tightened. We must be. Inside, Victor took the stage, basking in applause. Clara stood at the edge of the hall, unseen. That piece he's about to play, she said, was the first I ever wrote. For my mother's funeral. Evan stared. And he stole it? Clara nodded. He told the world he composed it to cope with my absence. I was standing right beside him. Victor's fingers struck the first note, the melody rising like smoke. Clara closed her eyes. Her hands moved in air, tracing each note before it landed. Evan leaned close. That melody, It's grief turned to light, Clara whispered, and he uses it as a curtain for lies. As Victor played, Clara stepped forward, out of the shadows. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some recognized her. Others blinked in disbelief. Victor's hands froze mid-phrase. His smile faltered. Clara spoke, voice firm. That piece is mine, composed with tears, not for applause. Victor recovered quickly, chuckling. A misunderstanding, surely. Clara replied, I misunderstood once. Now I see clearly. The room silenced. Something had shifted. After the gala, reporters swarmed. Clara and Evan stood on the marble steps under the glare of flashes. Is it true Victor Lang plagiarized your music? One asked. Clara looked directly at the camera. Yes. And I let him. Out of fear. That ends today. Another reporter asked, Why now? Clara turned to Evan. Because someone reminded me I was never broken, just buried. The crowd murmured. In the distance, Victor watched from inside the glass doors, fury hidden beneath a public smile. Evan whispered, Hell come harder now. Clara answered, Let him. I finally know what power sounds like, and it's not his voice anymore. Back at the estate, Clara opened her studio for the first time in years. Dust lingered in corners, but light filled the space. He made me fear this room, she said. Every time I entered, I heard his voice in my mind. Evan placed a fresh sheet of composition paper on the desk. Then let's write something that only you can hear. Clara sat at the piano, her fingers trembling. What if the notes are gone? Evan smiled. Then, we invent new ones. She played a slow scale. It wavered. Then steadied. With every note, the room seemed to shift, its weight lifting. Clara turned. You brought music back, not just to me, but to this place. Evan said, You brought it back to yourself. The next morning, Clara stood in front of a microphone in her private recording booth, headphones resting lightly on her ears. Evan sat behind the glass, watching as she adjusted herself with slow, deliberate calm. She inhaled, then pressed a single key. What followed wasn't just a song, it was a reclamation. Her voice hummed with pain, love, survival. Evan closed his eyes, letting it wash over him. When she finished, the room fell still. Clara stepped out, cheeks wet but smiling. I never needed to be found, she said. I just needed someone to listen while I returned. Evan stood. I'll always listen. And in that moment, surrounded by soundproof walls and soaring silence, Clara finally felt free. The morning of the release arrived. Clara's new composition, an unfiltered anthem of survival, was set to stream worldwide. Evan watched from the edge of the room as Clara sat beside the window, blindfold draped beside her, eyes adjusting to morning light. Do you feel ready? He asked. Clara took a long breath. I don't feel ready. I feel real. Across the screen, countdown numbers ticked down. The moment the timer hit 0, a melody filled the air. Hers. Pure, raw, and unmistakably hers. Within minutes, reactions flooded in. The world was listening. Clara stood. I thought being heard would terrify me, she whispered. But it's peace I feel. Evan nodded. The kind only truth can bring. As streams climbed into the millions, Clara received a call from the International Composers Guild. We'd like you to perform at the gala, the voice said. A solo return. Clara's fingers tightened on the phone. Is Victor involved? A pause. He declined. After last week, we believe the world wants your music, not his story. Clara looked to Evan, her voice steady. I'll do it. After the call, she sat down, stunned. I never thought I'd be invited back without begging. Evan smiled. That's because this time, they're coming to you. Clara reached for her violin, resting her chin gently on it. Then, let's remind them why I was here in the first place. Rehearsals began. Clara returned to her roots, strings, silence, story. She practiced not for applause but for something sacred, truth. Evan watched each session, offering presence more than advice. On the third day, Clara paused mid-note. "Why did you stay?" she asked. Evan replied without hesitation. "Because the moment I saw you in that elevator, I knew you weren't broken. Just waiting." Clara smiled faintly. "Then thank you for waiting with me." That night, she performed an unreleased piece. Alone, to an empty room. Evan listened from the hallway. The music was unlike anything before, haunted, hopeful, whole. When she finished, Clara whispered, "I'm not afraid of my past anymore." It made the music honest. The night of the gala arrived. The auditorium buzzed with expectation. Clara stood backstage, dressed in black velvet, violin in hand. "He's here," Evan murmured, nodding toward the back row where Victor sat alone, cloaked in indifference. Clara didn't flinch. Let him watch. The curtain rose. Spotlights bathed her in gold. As the first note rang out, a hush fell. Her composition climbed from quiet mourning to radiant power. Each bow stroke severed ties with the man who once owned her silence. In the final chord, she let the bow fall to her side, eyes closed. Applause erupted, not as noise, but as thunderous release. Clara bowed once, then looked into the crowd. "Now they know," she said. "Now I know." Backstage after the performance, Clara leaned against the wall, tears brimming but unshed. Evan joined her quietly. "How do you feel?" he asked. She chuckled softly. "Not victorious, not vindicated, just light." Evan nodded. Sometimes the heaviest chains are the invisible ones. A stagehand approached. "Miss Duval, the board would like to speak to you." Clara stood tall. "Let them wait." She turned to Evan. "For once, I want to leave a stage with nothing left unsaid." Evan looked at her, heart full. "You already did." They walked out together, not as teacher and broken musician, not as billionaire and stranger, but as equals, survivors, and two people who met between floors and rose together. Weeks passed. Clara's music climbed charts, but she refused interviews. "Let the sound speak," she told Evan. They spent mornings composing, evenings walking quiet paths around the estate. One afternoon, Clara paused near the garden fountain. "I used to think being seen meant being used," she said. "Now I understand. It depends on who's looking." Evan smiled. "And how they listen." A courier arrived with a package. Inside, legal documents. "He's suing," Clara said, her voice flat. Evan leaned over the papers. "He's claiming ownership of your first 3 works." Clara nodded. "He's not fighting to win. He's fighting to exhaust." Evan looked up. "Then, let's not let him." Clara's gaze sharpened. "Let's go public, with the truth. All of it." Evan arranged a live interview with a trusted journalist. Clara entered the studio with poise, no blindfold, no pretense. The interviewer asked gently, "Why now?" Clara answered, "Because silence is no longer my refuge, it was my prison." She recounted the manipulation, the signature forgeries, the emotional debt she never consented to owe. "He said I'd disappear without him," she said. "So I disappeared, to survive. But now, I speak to reclaim." Across the country, millions watched. The world didn't blink. When the segment ended, Evan met her outside. "You just rewrote your legacy in real time." Clara exhaled. "Then let's keep composing." Public response was swift. Hashtags trended. Support flooded in. More musicians came forward, others silenced by Victor's influence. "He built an empire on stolen voices," one declared. Clara sat in a room with them, surrounded by silent strength. "I thought I was alone," she said. A young cellist replied, "You gave us the courage to speak." Evan observed, quietly recording testimonials. "We'll build something from this," Clara said. "A foundation for artists, protection, not performance." Cheers echoed softly. That evening, Clara posted the first draft of her idea online. Within hours, thousands offered support. Evan looked at her with pride. Your silence once protected you. Now your voice protects others. Victor Lang's publicist issued a denial, followed by a defamation lawsuit. Clara read it in silence. Evan asked, "Do you want to stop?" Clara shook her head. "No. I want to finish." They filed a counterclaim, with evidence. Old recordings, emails, even witness statements emerged. Victor's once polished veneer began to crack. He built castles on sand, Clara said. Now it's time for the tide. In a courtroom weeks later, Clara testified with unwavering calm. She told her story not with bitterness, but with precision. Evan sat behind her the whole time. When she stepped down, he stood. "I've never seen strength so quiet," he whispered. Clara replied, "It's always been quiet, just no one listened." The verdict arrived quietly, one rainy morning. Evan read the message aloud. "You won. Full rights restored. Public apology ordered." Clara stood by the window, watching droplets race down the glass. "It doesn't feel like triumph," she said. "Just breath." Evan approached. "Maybe that's what freedom is." Clara turned. "Then I want to use it, not to reclaim, but to create." They walked into her studio, now filled with instruments, light and laughter from musicians who had found their voices through her courage. She sat at the piano, opened a new journal. "From silence. A symphony," she whispered. Evan sat beside her. "Play it loud, Doy." Months later, Clara stood on a stage she built herself, an open-air concert under a blanket of stars, no sponsors, no labels. Just music, and those who needed to hear it. Evan tuned the final violin backstage. "You still get nervous?" he asked. Clara smiled. "I do, but now it means something good is about to happen." The crowd quieted as she stepped forward, violin in hand. "This isn't a comeback," she said into the mic. "It's a continuation." Her first note carried through the still night, clear and bold. In the front row sat young musicians, many who had once doubted themselves. As the melody grew, the sky above responded, with gentle wind and rustling leaves, nature leaning in to listen. After the performance, Clara sat barefoot at the edge of the stage, her violin beside her. A young girl approached, violin case in hand, trembling. "How do you play without fear?" she asked. Clara patted the space beside her. "I don't, I play with it." The girl sat down. "What if my voice is too small?" Clara smiled. "Then let it whisper. A true note doesn't need to shout to be heard." Evan watched from nearby, heart full. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Clara said, "That was me once, scared, voiceless." Evan replied, "Now you're the voice for those who haven't found theirs yet." She leaned against him gently. "And you're the quiet behind the strength." The next morning, Clara visited the old elevator. The same one where it all began. Now out of order and sealed for maintenance, it stood like a closed chapter. She touched the door gently. "This was the place I broke, and the place I began." Evan stood beside her. "Strange how a few square feet can hold a lifetime." She laughed quietly. "If it hadn't jammed that day." Evan finished, "We never would met." Clara looked up. "Do you ever wonder what we were before that moment?" Evan smiled. Two broken instruments. Then one chord changed everything. They stood in silence, not to remember pain, but to honor the pause that gave way to music. Later in the garden, Evan found Clara composing beneath a blooming tree. Pages of sheet music flapped gently in the breeze. "New piece?" he asked. Clara looked up, eyes shining. "Final movement. I wanted to say goodbye and begin again." Evan read the title, Between Floors. He sat beside her, picking up a pencil to scribble a note. "You're putting us in music." Clara nodded. "Because we weren't just a moment. We were a measure, and we lasted." Evan said softly, "It's beautiful." Clara replied, "It's true." And with that, they began writing the final stanza. One note, one silence, one memory at a time, not to finish, but to let go. Clara's final note echoed through her studio. She let it linger, then released the bow. Evan stood in the doorway. "It's done." She turned. "Not done, delivered." He stepped closer, wrapping her gently in his arms. "What happens now?" Clara whispered. "Now we live the silence after the music." Outside, the wind moved softly through open windows. The world didn't erupt in applause, but it didn't need to. Clara had found her truth, her voice, her rhythm, and shared it. She had given everything, and found more in return. She rested her head on Evan's shoulder. "He'll never know what I became," she said. Evan kissed her temple. That was the point.